Hello and welcome to another edition of One-on-One with Swope Health. I am your host, Eric Wesson. Thanks so much for all your positive feedback, comments about the podcast. And I again want to thank Jaron Raven for the opportunity to be a part of this, and keep those comments coming. And most of all, tell somebody about it so that they can tune in as well. Joining us today is Judge Ardie Bland, and he is our guest today.
Oh, good morning. Happy to be here.
So where are you from?
I am from Kansas City, Missouri, born and raised. Lincoln High School product, old Lincoln, now Lincoln College Prep.
Okay.
And so born and raised here. Went to school here, went from there to now what's known as Truman State University. Mm-hmm. It was Northeast Missouri State then, and then after that went to Drake Law School up in Des Moines, Iowa.
And then law degree?
Once I got the law degree, I came back home. I wasn't originally intending to come back home, but I think God really had a bigger plan for me that I didn't see at the time, but came back. Worked for a small firm, clerked for Judge Thomas Newton, who's now retired, went on to become a Western District Court of Appeals judge. And then I decided that I wanted to work for Social Security Administration for probably about 7 years. Wrote several thousand decisions there as a decision writer. And then, I kind of wanted to have my dream, which was always to open up my own law practice. And I got a chance to do that and was successful. But then I saw some things that were in the system. Really didn't like what I was seeing about how people were being incarcerated, way they were being treated in the court system. And I had to rise to a bigger calling, became a judge. And while being a judge, I served for almost 15 years, but during that time developed a Veterans Treatment Court, actually the first one in the state of Missouri. And then after that, took over the Mental Health Court, also did some truancy court work there. But just really had a call and a passion to help people in the community.
And so, a municipal court judge, you were a municipal court judge for 15 years?
Yep, just a few months short of 15 years. Just a few months short. So did a little bit of everything while I was there. Some traffic that kind of goes with it. But during that time period, I really wanted to do something other than just take the cases through and run them through, because there's thousands of people that come through there every day. But there's people that are hurting and need help.
And when we talk about people that are hurting and need health, and you mentioned mental health, so what are your thoughts when you come to the Black community, specifically in mental health? What are some of the thoughts that come to mind?
Well, just one of the major things that I see is we just refuse to deal with it. We will have people that have in our community that have different behaviors, we'll just call it that, and we never take the time to address it. It really starts early on. A lot of children need something just as simple as an IEP or individualized education plan. And the parents, we either will ignore it, we'll say there's nothing wrong with our children, when many times it's just something simple as a learning disability, where a little treatment, a little therapy, someone to work with them, it could change the course of their life or their lives. And so I think it starts then, but then other, I'll say mental health disorders occur a little bit later, in either the high school or the young adult years. And it might have been something that was there all along, and we just never really take the time to go, to accept treatment. Like, we'll go if our leg is hurting, or, if our head is hurting or back is hurting, then we may go to the doctor then. But there's things that are in the area of mental health that we can go deal with. And, the book, we really talked about Black men. And I think there's not enough attention because we're trying to raise a bunch of boys to be tough. Well, that's fine, but they need to understand what really makes them tough. And being able to go deal with problems, I think, is the thing that's going to make you the toughest. Not ignoring them, but dealing with the problems.
So you think the biggest fear that we have is the word treatment? You think that's one of the hindrances when it comes to us seeking help?
Yeah, I think treatment and therapy is a bad term, you know, and I think we really need to go kind of deal with some of the slavery hangover that, you know, that we really have, and I think it's something that has kind of hung over and we've never really gotten past it, but you didn't want to seem hurt or weak. Right. Because if you were hurt or weak, then you were no longer good to the master. Right. And if you were no longer good to the master, well, bad things happen. And that's something that it seems like our community has not been able to overcome, the fact that we might be seen as weak. And sometimes you need some extra help to be strong, and you might have to ask for treatment or therapy. Well, slavery's over. Now you have the ability to go get help. I mean, there's somewhere everywhere. As a matter of fact, what's even more concerning, we don't even have as many people who go into a field of being able to provide treatment and therapy. Try to go find a black male therapist or a black male doctor or a black male counselor. It's complicated. And I've tried, because people call me all the time. Well, hey, I want someone to help me, you know, to help me out, but I want them to understand my struggle and my pain. Well, it's kind of complicated to find it. So, like, even as black men, we don't even go into those areas as career choices. And so it's really something that I think that's really holding black men back, and we've got to get beyond worrying about who's looking at me or what people think about me. If you need help, go get the help.
And they're going to look at you one way or the other.
Exactly.
So it doesn't make any difference. You might as well be healthy having them look at you than out here with your clothes on backwards.
Well, that's just it. If you get the help, they're not going to look at you backwards anyway. Right. So if you go get the help, you'll be better off anyway. And I think that's the thing that we fail to understand. And I remember when I was running the mental health court and the veterans treatment courts, one of the things that I thought that was so powerful. So I went to a seminar, and there's different things that groups that you can go to. Some's individualized, some are groups, some are small groups. But one of the surveys that I saw from a professor out of Indiana was it was really interesting, because it found that oftentimes common modalities of group therapy really were ineffective with black men. And I think that's something that really needs to be considered, because black men don't feel comfortable airing their laundry in front of a bunch of other people. I think it's probably even shown to some degree in the way we even attend church anymore. I think that's one of the issues, is being vulnerable in front of other people. That's something that we have a problem doing. Arguably, you could trace it back to slavery. And it's one of those things where it's going to take us time and education and wisdom and understanding and effort on all of our parts to try to break past some of those modes.
What about, and you know, you were talking about, and I was kind of processing it, thinking about it while you were speaking. You were talking about black men as counselors and psychologists and people to help. Didn't we put a lot of that pressure on pastors?
You know what? And it's funny that you say it, but you have to think this too. Some of the black pastors came from the same place we came from, and you want them to try to give you a perspective that maybe they haven't had, unless God gave them some special kind of wisdom to help them to be able to overcome it. But I will say this, in every area of professionalism, lawyers, if you go to a lawyer, you're not going to go to a corporate lawyer and expect a corporate lawyer to counsel you on family law, or a family law attorney to help you to deal with some problem having to do with the car accident. You're not going to go do that. But we expect pastors who went to maybe seminary, and I say maybe seminary, who maybe went to seminary to counsel you on marriage, to counsel you on financial matters. I mean, we are expecting them to do things that they're not equipped to do. And if they haven't dealt with many of their own issues, for mental health, substance abuse, because we have pastors that deal with mental health and substance abuse issues. We have pastors who deal with depression. We have pastors, who deal with anxiety, the constant feeling that, hey, I have to walk this line, I have to be perfect. Hey, that's pressure on anybody. I don't care who you are. But we expect them who have probably grown up with subpar means, maybe doing somewhat better now as a pastor, but they're going to counsel you on every area of your life and expect it to have the answers. And if anything else, we expect them to be fixers. And that's not, they're not equipped for that. And we need to be more honest, even in our communities, that we're going to need help. Like I believe, and this is my view on it, but I believe God gave us all different areas in the body. And so with that, we need to reach out to those other areas. If you need financial planning, you're not going to go to somebody whose finances are worse than yours. You're going to go to somebody at least who's been trained in that area. And I think that's where we've got to start getting to. So if something's wrong with my mind and I'm not thinking correctly, I need to go see a psychologist or a therapist or a psychiatrist or a counselor or someone to help me with my thought processes. And this goes back, to a conversation that you and I had even before today, where it's like there's nothing wrong with a lot of black men have an issue in that they're trying to find their voice. Right. And we talked about how I ran into this one young black man who was just angry. He was angry. And I finally got him to sit down and I said, hey, man, what are you angry about? He's like, I don't know. I'm just mad. Yeah. And I'm sure, we had the conversation where there's a lot of people out here that are angry and they don't even know why they're mad because they haven't been able to find their voice. And if they were at least able to go talk to a counselor or a therapist and they could sit there, and that's one of the things that I love about that area, they're not telling you what to think. They're at least helping you to process what you're thinking. And once you understand what you're thinking, and if you're lucky enough why you're thinking it, then you can kind of move forward. And some people are just stuck in an angry place, and they're never able to move forward because they can't find their voice to kind of talk about it. And that's the thing that I hope that even after today, anyone listening to this, it's like, hey, if you're angry or depressed or sad, reach out to somebody because they're not going to necessarily tell you how to think, but help you to process what you're thinking so you can at least talk about it and move forward.
Great information. You're listening to One-on-One with Swope Health. I'm your host, Eric Wesson. I'm joined today by Judge Ardie Bland, and we are just having a table topic conversation. So one of the things that you said in the magazine I thought was interesting, and I want you to expand on it and explain it so if people read it, they're not misinterpreting what you were saying. You said sometimes mothers would say, put their kids in jail. And I guess that was the substance abuse and all of those things. So explain what was going on in those situations.
So many times, and I'll put it in terms of this because I think it'll be more common or more obvious for people to kind of deal with it. Many times you've had young mothers or just mothers, maybe even grandmothers, trying to raise a young black boy. And I like to keep it real. I mean, we can say African American, everything else, but black. We want to just go with black boy. And I say black boy because at some point this black boy is going to become a black man. And so you will have mothers who don't understand the behavior. They don't understand why he's angry. He's a little boy. He hasn't found his voice. He hasn't figured it out. Well, over time, they get to a point where I'm talking, nobody's understanding. They're listening, but they're not understanding. Well, that's maybe okay at like 6, 7, 8, 9. By the time you get about 15 or 16 and your behavior is not matching up with the mindset of the female or the matriarch where you are, that's kind of probably running the house in more often than not, and she's tired of dealing with him. He's getting in trouble. He's causing her problems, maybe not going to school, maybe not doing anything that he's supposed to do in school, running the streets, coming home whenever he wants to, maybe cursing her out. Gets to the point where pretty much any parent, they can get fed up. So when they're constantly getting in trouble, she's spending all of her resources to try to get him out of jail. Then they get to court and they're at the last point and they're like, Judge, I need you to put him in jail, because they're afraid either he's going to die. She's tried with her means to get him counseling or therapy to talk to somebody. She's probably gone to all of the men in her life, if there are any men in her life, to say, hey, help me with my son. But because there's maybe no real relationship with those men, maybe not a connection is made. Maybe it's a situation where the older guy that she's asking can't make a connection. They come into court, they see me as a black judge that may understand,
right?
And they're like, hey, I need you to put him in jail, because either the mental illness is so bad now, substance abuse is so bad now, and to her, I am the person, the last line to save his life. They're not caring about his criminal record. They don't care about whether he can work 30, 40 years from now. The thing that they're worried about is, at this moment, my son needs help. You look like me. You know what I'm talking about.
Right.
You got an idea. Maybe you can save his life. And then, a lot of times when they came in front of me, they knew that I work with veterans. They knew that I work with people that had substance abuse issues. They knew that I ran the mental health court. So they were like, hey, come in. Maybe you can save his life. Maybe you can somehow get him on the right path. And I think that's the sense of desperateness that you get from so many moms and so many parents, that it's just like, hey, I'm lost. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And in some instances, I really just want to go sit down with mom and family and say, hey, back when he was like 5, did you seem to understand that he was having a problem studying in school? Maybe he was having a problem reading, and we never thought, well, maybe he's dyslexic, or maybe he has a learning disability. And if we're really honest, if you aren't really doing well in school and you're having problems staying focused or being able to understand what's there, school ain't a fun place.
Right.
In fact, you can be easily pushed to the side, and then one of the common behaviors is, well, I'm just going to act out for attention so nobody knows I'm not learning anything. I can't read,
yeah.
I can't read.
Yeah.
And you can get to a point where not being able to read really hurts the rest of your life. And it starts out as something that simple, but then if I get in trouble, nobody knows that I don't understand what's going on. And that's a typical behavior and a pattern for kids. And that's not just black kids, but that's across the board. I learned a lot from truancy, where you can kind of see similar behaviors and activities of kids. But it's so often, and there's been a few dads that have come in there as well, but oftentimes it's been mothers who have said, basically what they're saying is, save my son's life.
Right, right. So do you feel a lot of pressure, because you brought up an interesting point, and I always wondered, since we have probably, 2 hands full of black judges, do you feel any added pressure being a black judge and being a role model and an example? Do you feel any added pressure in that versus just being a judge?
Yeah, it's been a lot of pressure, but I have to live by to whom much is given, much is required.
Okay.
And when I look at me being what's kind of known as part of the talented 10th, my responsibility is greater to try to make sure that I reach back and try to help others. I would say the biggest part and the toughest part about being a black judge has been trying to help our community, but they don't really realize what you're doing. And I think that's what's happening. So there'd be a lot of young black men who would come in and they would be mad or upset because they're like, oh man, you trying to do this to me? And I'm like, no. What you don't understand is I'm trying to get you out of the system. But they never, because they're so untrusting of the system, it doesn't matter that I look like them. The only thing they're looking at is the black robe. They don't care. And oftentimes, the funniest thing ever is I'm walking down the street and some guy runs up to me and they're like, Judge, and I turn around, I'm like, oh man, what's getting ready to happen? And the next thing you know, the guy's crying and he gives me a hug. It's like, you know what, I'm sorry. I didn't understand what you were doing at the time. But now, you know, I've got a job, I've got a car, I've got my family. I can actually drive around town and I'm not worried about, you know, looking over my shoulder. If I get pulled over, I know I'm good.
Right.
But it takes so much work sometimes to help them get out of the system. It's kind of the old thing, you know, do I give you a fish dinner or do I teach you how to fish? But so many people have been getting fish dinners that to have to actually teach them how to fish, they start getting angry. It's like, no, I just want to pay and go. I just want to eat. But I'm like, no.
Right.
If I give you a fish dinner right now, you're going to be hungry tomorrow, maybe 2 days later, if you're really good. But you'll never know how to fish for a lifetime. And so just getting them to sit down and understand the rules or to deal with their mental health or substance abuse problems, it's been so powerful for me as a black man really trying to help other black men to understand, hey, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you get out and stay out. Because, you know, you can get in trouble in 5 seconds. I think if you're a black man, you understand how quick you can get in trouble. And sometimes it's not even something you did, but the guys you were hanging around with. Right. They do something, and they like, hey, come with us. Next thing you know, you didn't even know what was getting ready to happen. Jerome did something, and everybody in the group goes down. Right. Well, nobody wants to snitch, so we all go down with Jerome. Whereas if that little tingling sensation in the back of your neck made you go right, you're out of the situation. But just 5 seconds in, 5 years to get out though. You know, that's the thing that I try to. So what I try to do is expedite the process. What I tried to do for many years was expedite the process to get out. And stay out and never want to come back. Sometimes that's a little work. Sometimes that's a little pain. But the reality of it is we've got to try to get black men to understand, hey, we need help. Let's get the help, take the help, and keep moving forward rather than just staying in one place. And generally for us, you know yourself, it's an angry place. Yeah. And anger doesn't do anything for anybody. Nothing.
So if you could, as we wrap up, if you could wave a magic wand over the black community in Kansas City to change the conditions economically, education-wise, health-wise, what would you do?
Wow. That's kind of like giving a person 3 wishes, but you have to do each wish in 3 words. So I would have to say we'd have to put money into mental health education. And when I say education, where we all, and I'm seeing it a lot more now, so that's good, mental health education And I'm talking about like spotting it early on and it not being a fear of the community, taking the fear factor out. Because I think once we take the fear factor out through education, we can develop a whole generation. It's like, oh, I'm not feeling right. I'm going to go talk to somebody. But that also then will drive more people into the career field. Because if more people are in the career field, there's more people to educate. And it's like the old concept, especially for us, which was big as black people at one time in our community, the most prevalent and honorable profession was to be teachers.
Right.
So almost all of your predominantly successful people became teachers. Until then, they start realizing, well, we need to change the laws. They got educated enough to understand the laws. And so then law became one of the professions for everybody to really start moving into. But I think with education, we can then saturate our market with an understanding of what mental health is. And then from that point on, there will be more people who want to go into the career field because then they will have no fear of the profession. They will have a reverence for it and understand that, hey, you know, we'll have way more people coming into it, because until you have been to therapy and counseling, you don't really know what it is. It's just that dirty word in our community, but we have to dispel that myth.
Right. And then understanding what it is because of the stigma attached to it. And people, and especially with kids, because when I used to teach elementary school, and one of the things that I learned was with black boys that first, second, and third grade, they were excited and wanted to learn, and you know, ooh, they raising their hand, jumping up and down in their seat, wanting to give the answer. So then they transition from that period into the fourth grade, and then they become behavior disorders. Then we want to medicate them or over-medicate them, thinking that this is the real problem, when it's really not. They're just not being challenged. Yeah. And a lot of times it's not a mental health issue. It's just like, I tell my son is 9, he's in the fourth grade. I tell his teacher, give him work. Give him work. She says he gets through with the work and then he walks around the classroom and disturbs everybody else. I said, give him more work to do. She said, well, okay, but that's the pattern that we have.
Well, you're probably stuck with having to cultivate that mind. So you may need to get him some extra education. To take him, because he may be beyond where they are right now.
Right.
Like you may be dealing with a different mind there.
Yeah.
And I used to be that kid, so I really kind of understand that. I would have all A's, but in the self-control and work habits and all of that, I would get a 0 almost every time, because I just wasn't being challenged until a little bit later. You know, they did some testing and kind of found that out.
Right.
But I tell you, all of that means nothing now. It seems like the older I get, the more I realize I don't know. So, you know, that's the incredible thing about this. No matter how much you think you know, you're not really wise until you realize what you don't know.
Ooh, that's it. Thanks so much for joining us. Great conversation. I appreciate you. And to our listening audience, I want you to know that you are the greatest audience in the world. Till next week, remember, tough times don't last. Tough people do. Until next week, peace.